The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
You may remember that the Red Cross raised about $500 million for Haiti, and we now have learned they built only 6 homes with that money. In late 2011, the Red Cross launched this huge multi-million-dollar project to transform a particularly poor area of Haiti in a particular neighborhood of the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince. They were hit super hard by the earthquake, and the main focus of the project, called Lamika, was to build permanent homes for people. The Red Cross received a ton of money, about $500 million. Not one home has actually been built in the neighborhood of Campeche. Many residents still live in shacks made of rusty steel, rusty sheet metal, many without access to drinkable water, no electricity, no basic sanitation. And when it rains, of course, their homes flood. Residents have to start bailing out mud and water. And the Red Cross says it has provided homes to more than 130,000 people, but the number of permanent homes they have built in all of Haiti is 6. An investigation was done by ProPublica and by NPR, and it shows that a lot of this is a result of Haiti, of the Red Cross's own problems. The Red Cross is saying, listen, there's this complex land permitting and construction permitting situation in Haiti. That may well be true, but other organizations have had no problem navigating those complexities, and they have built homes in Haiti. The Red Cross is not disclosing details of how they spent the hundreds of millions of dollars donated for Haiti. They say merely that the title system is dysfunctional and it's been difficult to build the homes. And then in other promotional materials, the Red Cross said it has helped more than 4.5 million individual Haitians, quote, get back on their feet. That's not very precise or specific, Lewis. Listen, we have helped millions of Haitians get back on their feet. The 4.5 million number is also difficult because the entire country's population is 10 million. Has this one organization, in spite of only building 6 homes in the whole country, actually helped 45% of that country's citizens get back on their feet?
Maybe the idea is that 4.5 million Haitians at least were uprooted when the earthquake happened, and we gave a bunch of money, and so that kind of helps all of them. Of course, it's nonsense, but maybe that's their idea here.
ProPublica's report on this is pretty extensive, and I recommend looking at the entire thing. But I wonder what is ultimately going on here. Has the Red Cross been around so long that its focus has shifted from fulfilling its mandate to simply guaranteeing its own success and survival, kind of like the United States Congress? That can happen with huge nonprofits that are around a really long time, where they sort of become concerned with self-preservation above using the funds for their stated mission. And it wouldn't be the first time if that's indeed what's going on with the Red Cross.
They bring in a lot of money, and you're right. It's probably easier just to say, let's maintain this. Let's keep the money coming in and help where we can, instead of going all out. Or you could just have straight up corruption here.
Elon Musk's SpaceX has officially asked for permission to build 4,000 satellites capable of beaming the internet to all parts of Earth, including the most remote areas. The plan was outlined in a request to the FCC, and it would transform SpaceX, which is Elon Musk's rocket company, into a new internet service provider, and it would compete with the likes of Verizon and Comcast. It's incredible what Elon Musk and SpaceX and Tesla, full disclosure, I own a few shares of Tesla, what it is that they are looking to achieve. Some people see Elon Musk as sort of this dark character with ulterior motives, and many others say this is the entrepreneur that that really represents what the ideal entrepreneur should be in 2015 Earth.
I can say with certitude that I know he wants to advance things. And he has done a great job at doing that. I don't think he has evil motives here. I think he has everything he wants. I think he just likes to see how far he can take things. And that's admirable because he's been doing it in the right way.
The FCC responded to this proposal from SpaceX saying, before we approve this entire thing, we want to do a test to see if SpaceX's antenna technology is even strong enough to reach devices on Earth. In other words, can satellites, can this technological setup that Elon Musk has proposed actually work in terms of beaming internet down to individuals on the surface of the planet? And if everything goes according to plan, these tests could start as soon as 2016, and then the satellites and internet operation could be enacted by within about 5 years. So this is just so fascinating. It would be really great if it was all done in a way that didn't allow the government to spy on people's data, but I don't know what will happen as far as that goes.
If I told you that you could give free internet to everyone in the world, or at least inexpensive internet to everyone in the world, but that governments might be able to see some of that information, I think you'd still probably agree that it's a good idea, right?
Well, there's a huge difference between free and low cost, because in much of the world, even low cost is too expensive. So we really would need to distinguish, are we actually providing free internet to anyone on this planet who has a device, of course, with which to access the internet, or is it going to be low cost? Because for me, the devil is in the details here. Low cost is drastically different in terms of its implications and significance than free internet. And remember, Lewis, Facebook has had also an idea of free internet, and it turned out that they wanted to set it up so that it was free to access Facebook and some other websites, but to sort of access the full internet, you had to pay. And it really ended up being not exactly what they initially pitched it as. So I'm interested in hearing more from SpaceX.
We do need to hear more. I think the idea is that this would be free internet, but yeah, we need more details.
We're raising money, $50,000. We have 50 days to do it. About 39 days, I believe, remain. We're around $20,000 in, or about 40% of the way. We really need your support. If you want to see The David Pakman Show continue to grow, expand our offerings, improve the production value of the show, please help us get to our $50,000 goal. Any contribution really does help. We're over 200 donors already and hoping to get, I would love to have 500 or more individual donors in this campaign. You can donate by going to davidpakman.com and clicking on the Indiegogo banner on the right side of the page. Remember that we also have really great perks lined up. The perks start at $9 and go all the way up to $10,000. So there's something for most budgets there. Please consider making a contribution today.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to The David Pakman Show.
Please consider becoming a member of The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com/membership. We have a long list of member benefits you can read about there, including the bonus show and the commercial-free audio and video feeds of the show. Today's new member of the day is Matthew Pays. Matthew, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. Join Matthew at davidpakman.com/membership. And remember that the Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign is ongoing for the show. Go to our website, davidpakman.com, and click on the Indiegogo banner on the right side of the page. Read about what we're doing. If you haven't heard about the expansion that we are doing to the David Pakman Show, check it out there. And if you feel it is worthwhile, consider making a contribution. 3 years ago this week, Megachurch Pastor Creflo Dollar denied punching and choking his own daughter. His then 15-year-old daughter said that he charged her, choked her, slammed her on the ground, and then beat her with a shoe. He had the charges dropped after completing an anger management course. He didn't even need to enter a plea in this pre-trial intervention program. Was Creflo lying when he denied the allegations? I guess we will never ultimately know, Lewis.
We can never know for sure. After all of this happened, after he was in the clear, his then 19-year-old daughter spoke out and said that he choked her for 5 seconds and slapped her. And this, in case people don't know, Creflo Dollar is the guy who recently was seeking to acquire a $65 million jet.
Right. And he wanted his congregation to fund it.
And then he had the GoFundMe campaign. And it seems like he is going to be getting this $65 million jet. This guy, what is up with these megachurch pastors?
He's one of these prosperity pastors who says God wants him to have really expensive stuff and God wants everybody to have expensive stuff. And he seems to be able to buy the expensive stuff now. But the promise usually to the congregants is if you donate to me and I can get the expensive stuff, then it'll come back to you like tenfold or 100-fold. And then at some point in the presumably very distant future, you will be able to buy the expensive stuff too.
It's really sad how he is able to seduce people and to turn them into what? I don't know. I don't want to use the wrong term here, but anyway, he brainwashes them.
Yeah, I feel really bad for. Yeah, obviously, I sometimes get really angry with guys like Creflo Dollar who are using the supposed word of God that other people presumably take seriously just to enrich themselves personally. But then I really feel bad for those who I feel are being victimized by him, who are those individuals who, if you ask them, they probably would say they're not being victimized, that they believe the gospel of Jesus and that Creflo preaches that gospel and blah, 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 you know, all the stuff. But I still feel bad because I think you're absolutely right. If you're convinced that the path forward of all the religions that are out there that you could choose from, all of the ones that have come and gone, and even within Christianity, of all of the flavors of Christianity and denominations that exist, that the path towards enlightenment and Jesus is through one of these prosperity pastors seeking $65 million private jets, then I just, my highest order feeling I have is feeling really sad for those people.
I feel bad for those people, but you know what? If you were to talk to them, you might find that that ignorance truly is bliss.
2 years ago this week, Texas man Ezekiel Gilbert was found not guilty after murdering an escort, essentially a prostitute, who refused to have sex with him based on a Texas law that allows individuals to use deadly force to retrieve stolen property at night. So the very simple explanation was that on Christmas Eve, Gilbert paid Lenora Frago $150 for sex, but she wouldn't have sex with him and then refused to give him the money back. He shot her in the neck, which paralyzed her. She died 7 months later. He had paid, and he did not get his property, which was sex with the woman. It was considered theft. It was nighttime, and thus he was able to justifiably kill that woman. I don't know how the legality of prostitution plays into this. That was never really addressed then, and I still haven't heard an explanation.
Yeah, who knows if what he was supposed to receive was even a factor in this case. I guess he did hand her money and received nothing in return. But if you are just paying for the person's company as an escort service, as most escorts, you know, that is the claim, then he did receive his product or his service. So it's, I don't know, it's just a classic Texas story.
And
really.
then the other argument would be, well, he gave $150, and then regardless of what it was he was trying to purchase, he felt he didn't get it. He asked for his money back, and he didn't get the money back, so it was the $150 that was the property he was trying to retrieve at night. And you could say the prostitution doesn't matter. The property that was stolen from him was $150, and it was nighttime, and thus, as Lewis says, a classic Texas story, just a stunning case. I still remember the details of this one, even though it's been 2 years, because it's so insane.
It is really crazy. It's just one of those crazy laws that sometimes you read about and think, oh, that law will never be used in an actual case. It's probably used more than we realize.
1 year ago this week, Walmart apologized because they were selling as a home decor poster Nazi propaganda, essentially. It was a picture of that infamous gate at the Dachau concentration camp that read, in German, "Work will make you free." Walmart had it listed as an inspirational poster. Walmart ended up blaming a third-party seller who posted it to their online marketplace. In Walmart's defense, Sears and Amazon also ran into that exact same problem.
They did, yeah. So I think what's happening here, either the people who monitor this type of thing had no idea what they were looking at, or there's just very little monitoring of these items being placed on these marketplaces from third-party sellers.
Right, but either way, was the third-party seller selling it honestly, what they thought honestly was as an inspirational poster, or were they doing it as some kind of weird practical joke?
Hard to say. I think education could be the issue here. Maybe a lot of people didn't know what they were looking at on both sides. I'm not really sure. I don't know the motivations of those third-party sellers.
This reminds me a little bit of, I was recently talking to someone about when it was really popular to get the tattoos in the US of Chinese characters. And there are all these anecdotal incidents of people having some, if you were to just read it, what's the meaning of that in English? It's something absurd that people did not really intend to have on their bodies.
Yes, it's like when we go online and we see those shirts in Asia that have English on them, and it makes no sense. It's completely broken. There are people in this country with tattoos that are pretty much the same thing.
Would you get, none of your tattoos have any language on them, right?
No, in my opinion, I don't see the point of having text on a tattoo. I think it kind of defeats the purpose.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I think it's supposed to be an image that represents something. And if you're trying to say something, try and have an image that depicts that or represents that.
So what you're saying is any tattoo that is words, that has something spelled out, is a ridiculous tattoo?
I'm not saying they're all ridiculous. I'm saying I would not choose to get one, and I think it's preferable to have an image. That's just my opinion.
If you accidentally had a kid, right? Now, if you accidentally had a kid and you didn't love the kid, this question doesn't apply. But let's say you accidentally had a kid and things worked out and you love the kid. Would you consider getting a tattoo related to the kid?
I probably would not do that. I know lots of people do. That's fine. I don't think I would do that.
I find this fascinating. How did you develop, like at what age did you develop this philosophy on tattoos?
I was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
It's been quite some time, yeah.
Yeah, I get the sense that it's certainly been something you've been sort of mulling over for a long time.
It has, yes. It's something I have thought about extensively, and I've drawn my conclusions. That's the way it is.
All right. If you disagree with Lewis's position on tattoos and what tattoos make sense, please email in. I predict there will be some emails about this. We've got a great interview coming up next. We're actually going to go back to one of our incredible gun debates that we had at one point. This one was shortly after the Sandy Hook shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. That's after the break, and then we'll answer some of your questions. Very interesting questions on today's program, including, would we date transgender women? Would Lewis date transgender women? Would I date transgender women? We will address that question later on.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
This week, we're going back to a gun debate in our classic interview segment. December 17th, 2012, we had Larry Pratt. Many of you may be familiar with him. Executive Director of Gun Owners of America. He had this insane debate with Piers Morgan when Piers was the host of the program that formerly was Larry King's program on CNN. He debated Ladd Everitt, the Director of Communication from the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, and they talked about what conclusions can we draw from incidents where guns are used to commit crimes, like, for example, Newtown, Connecticut, and that tragedy. So I want to go back to this. The gun control debates are going to resurface as the 2016 election campaign gets going, and this was just a very interesting debate, and it will remind us of what we may expect going forward. I know this is an interview that not everybody saw who's currently watching our show, so let's go back to December of 2012, Larry Pratt and Ladd Everitt. Joining me now are Larry Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America, and Ladd Everitt, Director of Communications from the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. Now, gentlemen, initially we were going to have you on to talk about the Portland, Oregon shooting. Of course, over the weekend we had the shooting in Connecticut, so I think really that is going to change our discussion a little bit, although maybe less than I imagined. We'll see what you guys have to say. Larry, I want to go to you first. Do you believe we've seen anything over the weekend in Connecticut that makes you rethink what the policy should be on gun regulation, registration, and gun control and screening at all in this country?
Well, we certainly should be rethinking. We should be getting rid of the laws that have facilitated this kind of tragedy from occurring. Gun-free zones are a minor penalty compared to murder, and yet mass murder was contemplated and carried out. So it doesn't really make much sense to talk about penalizing people for having a gun in a gun-free zone when the people who are being victimized need to be able to protect themselves with a gun.
Okay, so Ladd, let's pick that up, the idea that if more people in the schools were armed, that would be a better situation.
Yeah, you know, David, I think we've reached a point, and particularly after the president's remarks last night, where we need to call madness madness. And I do know of one individual who did buy into Larry's thinking and this type of, his quote-unquote solution, and that was Nancy Lanza. There is no doubt that Larry, the minute before this kid went on a rampage, would have told us that Nancy Lanza, with the literal arsenal of firearms she had in her home, was probably the safest woman in America. I think this poisonous myth that the pro-gun movement has circulated now for decades, that guns make us safer, I think that died along with those little children on Friday, sadly.
You know, we were talking about perhaps getting into Oregon. At the mall in Oregon, there was a fellow carrying a gun against the mall policy, which would have been some sort of minor infraction. When he heard the sounds of the shooter firing, he ran toward them. And as he was coming into range, the shooter saw him. That's when he committed suicide. So to say that we can just dismiss the idea that guns make us safer, I think is to miss the point that all the data we have show that where guns are more readily available, there we have less of a problem with criminals, because criminals know they're going to meet quite likely effective resistance.
Is that what the data says, Ladd?
No, it doesn't say that. I mean, I would encourage the people that watch your show to look at the CDC data on state gun death rates, and consistently states with weak gun laws have the highest rates of gun death. And you can look at, even states like a state like Alaska, that always predominantly has one of the highest gun death rates in the 50 states. And, states with very tough gun laws, conversely, have very low rates of gun death. Finally, playing off what Larry just said, I'll leave it up to sane Americans to think about whether having shootouts in malls with lunatics who have been legally armed or easily gained access to firearms makes them safer or not.
Well, the data absolutely do not say what you're suggesting. The FBI for years have been producing data to show that the states that have the more, that make it easier for people to have firearms, to carry firearms concealed, those are the states that have the lower violent crime rates. And the idea that somehow we would be safer in a mall waiting for somebody to come and shoot us rather than being able to fight back, if we're talking about madness, I would say that borders on madness.
Well, madness is telling people that it's okay to be waiting in a mall for someone to come and shoot them. In other modern democracies, you don't have to worry about someone coming to shoot you in a mall or in a house of worship.
You're mistaken
when
again.
You're kindergarten. No, I'm not mistaken,
You're
Larry.
mistaken
The facts
again.
are, and again,
in Europe,
I'd
they
invite
have had some of the greatest mass murders in
nonsense.
just recent years. And in
That's
our
nonsense.
own country, the largest mass murder at a school occurred in 1929 in Michigan, when 37 people were murdered by a guy with bombs.
Larry,
so the idea that you are going to make us safe by banning guns.
Let's take a step back for a second, guys.
Those countries have astronomically lower rates of gun death, and you know that, Larry.
Let's take a step back for a second,
We were
gentlemen,
talking
please,
about mass murders, and the fact of the matter is Europe has had at least as big a problem.
Europe has astronomically lower rates of gun death, Larry, and you know that. And they have overall homicide
and you know
rates
what?
that are
Europe,
also dramatically lower than ours, Larry.
If you
Overall
look at Europe
homicide rates
over the last century, my friend, they were not able to stop a mass murderer called Hitler or another one called Lenin because they didn't have the means of resisting them.
Yeah.
Hold on, I think we have to wait. When we're talking about Hitler,
gun control laws, and it's crazy to suggest that somehow they have this lower rate of murder.
I think
because
we have
you
to,
Larry.
Hold on a second, guys, if I may here. If I may, I think we have to back off of the idea.
Hey, you know, let's have one at a time.
You're
factoring out mass murder that has occurred by their governments, facilitated, caused by, directly brought about by, and preceded by gun confiscations. That's the history of the last century in Europe.
Let me
and
pick
we don't
it
want
up
to
there
repeat
for a
that
second,
here.
guys. Guys, let me pick it up there for a second, if I may. Number one, I don't think that talking about World War II is relevant to talking about the mass shootings that we're having in the U.S. in 2012, first of all. But secondly, when we talk about regulation and restriction on guns, the idea of taking everyone's guns is, number one, not on the table, and number two, that's not constitutional. So no one's talking about the fear-mongering that we're seeing about, hey, if we start regulating guns, we're all of a sudden taking everyone's guns. I think that's being way blown out of proportion.
We regulate guns when we say that you can't have a gun in a mall. That is unconstitutional. That is a deadly idea, as we are finding out.
No, it's not.
And isn't it interesting that in Oregon, the mass murderer was cut very short because he saw somebody coming with a gun?
Well, Ladd, I think that the Constitution talks about well-regulated, right? So the idea of having no guns in specific places, wouldn't that be part of the regulation?
Let's get back to fact and move away from conspiracy theory. When our founders debated the Second Amendment, there is existing surviving debate. Again, these things are facts, not fiction or conspiracy theory. The issue of individual self-defense was not even mentioned in those debates. Those debates, 100% of the discussion centered around military service in state militia forces. With the Second Amendment, James Madison, who was a Federalist, by the way, a man that believed that only by strengthening the federal government could we preserve our union, he was attempting to balance control of the state militia between the federal government and the states, because in the Constitution, which came before the Bill of Rights, Madison had given a great control over the militia to the federal Congress, which worried anti-federalists and people concerned about states' rights. So, you know, all this insurrectionism coming from Larry about how he wants to arm himself against our government and shoot and kill government officials when he thinks they're tyrannical, that era ended on
Excuse
Friday.
me, James Madison was an insurrectionist. He was part of an insurrection against British tyranny.
Yeah,
and
they're
to say
gone now,
that somehow I'm participating in conspiracy theories when we've caught our own government in Fast and Furious supplying the Mexican cartel with the very kinds of guns you all would like to ban, I think that goes over the top.
Let's take a pause from the constitutional conversation, and I want to kind of, as we don't have unlimited time, I want to focus in very specifically on the idea of more guns in schools. Doesn't basic logic tell us that these same teachers that the American right has been calling overpaid and unqualified, becoming gun-toting security guards, can only lead to disaster, Ladd?
It's madness, David, and I'm not going to treat it as serious. And the people preaching it are people who hate our government, who are, you know, preaching the kind of insurrectionist ideology that you're hearing from Larry. I'm not going to even treat it as serious anymore. Not in the wake of, not after Friday.
Well, evidently you don't treat self-defense seriously. To say that somehow a teacher would have been perfectly useless in stopping a mass murderer is to say that nobody should be able to defend themselves. And I think that's part of the problem, is that there's a tendency to say that self-defense is somehow unproductive or counterproductive, and it only leads to worse things happening. How worse does it have to get with 27 people dead? Surely, had somebody come barging into that classroom with a gun, that would have had a much greater chance of ending it rather than the creep running out of bullets.
Ladd?
I just think it's pathetic. I mean, you know, here Larry is. He's lobbied for years to weaken our gun laws to the point where lunatics like Jared Loughner, James Holmes, Adam Lanza can easily gain guns, often legally, because of his lobbying. And now he's telling us that because he's done that, and because he's putting us under threat every day that we should have to bring guns into a classroom with 5- and 6-year-olds. I think that's disgusting. I think it's time to treat madness like
self-defense is disgusting, then there's not much I can do to help you.
But I think Larry.
A teacher there with a gun would have been very undisgusting. It would have been disgusting only to the mass murderer. And if you're finding that disgusting, then we really have a different point of view on the world, don't we?
Oh, we certainly do.
All right. There's certainly much more that can be said. I think we've seen that people are coming at this from drastically different sides. I wonder how possibly we could ever come together on some kind of compromise on this. Hopefully the next few days, weeks, and months will give us a sense of that. I wish we had more time. We've been speaking with Larry Pratt, the Executive Director of Gun Owners of America, and Ladd Everitt, the Director of Communications at the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. Gentlemen, I appreciate you being here today, even if we couldn't get much agreement.
Good to be with you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
It's that time of the week, time to answer audience questions. Let's start with the first question from Kevin about the designated hitter versus pitcher in baseball. David, shouldn't both leagues have the same rules? Okay, so this is a sports question. It's a baseball question. If you don't care about baseball, you may not care about this question, but I think it's an interesting one. In baseball, you have the American League and the National League. The rules are basically the same, but the American League and National League differ with regard to the batting lineup. In the American League, the pitcher does not bat when his team is playing offense. There is a designated hitter. The designated hitter only hits. They do not play defense. So of the 9 players that are playing defense, the pitcher is not in the batting lineup. The pitcher is replaced by a designated hitter. In the National League, the pitcher hits. The pitcher bats, typically at the end, at the bottom of the rotation, bats 9th. The pitchers are not good hitters. National League pitchers are slightly better than American League hitters. Of course, players can be traded between the leagues. So where this becomes an issue is in 2 places. Number one, in interleague play, when you have American League teams playing against National League teams, and in the World Series, where the winner of the American League faces off against the winner of the National League. And the rule is you play by the rules of the league in which the home team plays. So if it's American League versus National League, and it's at the National League stadium, then the pitcher bats. If it's at the American League stadium, the pitcher is replaced by a designated hitter. For a long time, I have felt that the rules should be made the same in both leagues. Now, if you want the pitchers to hit, then have the pitchers hit in both leagues. If you want the designated hitter to be there, have the designated hitter be there in both leagues. And I think it's just that it causes an inconsistency. And in a sense, you could argue that it is an advantage to the National League teams. Because if you're an American League team, when you're home, you have the designated hitter as you're used to. And the National League team can always replace the pitcher with another hitter, right? They're not at a disadvantage. And if you're at a National League park, the National League has better hitters as pitchers generally because they're used to it. But the American League all of a sudden has to have a pitcher bat that is not used to doing so. So I feel very strongly that we should have the same rule with regard to the designated hitter in both leagues, Lewis. Am I wrong?
I think that I would like to see the rules the same on both sides. And I like seeing pitchers hit. I think that if you're going to play baseball, you need to be able to play on both sides, offense and defense. I think you should be good at both. I want to see people who are good at both, and I want to see players do both.
And it does add, yeah.
I understand that, the physical toll that pitching can take, and that, having to bat might not be the best thing for that.
Certainly having pitchers bat adds another interesting element to the strategy, because if you're getting to a point in the game where your pitcher is still going strong, but you're maybe down by a run and you've got a couple of men on base, and this might be a good time to pinch hit when the slot comes up for your pitcher. You have to decide, well, I want to pinch hit to have a better shot at scoring these runs, but then my pitcher is now out of the game. I'm going to have to put in another pitcher, and maybe the current pitcher I have is still doing really well. There's an added element of strategy that is interesting, but I would actually be okay either way as long as we have the same rules in both leagues. I think it is time. Very interesting question from Kevin. If you don't care about baseball, I apologize for the last 4 minutes having to endure that. Next question came in via voicemail. You can leave voicemail questions any time of day. 219-2-DAVID-P. It is related to the transgender community. Let's take a listen.
Hello, David and Lewis. Would you be comfortable being romantically involved or in an intimate long-term relationship with an individual who is transgender and who has had a sex change operation to go from male to female? Also, how would this affect your sexual identities, if at all? Thanks.
Okay, so the question is quite straightforward. It's what would be your opinion on being in a relationship with a transgender individual, but not anybody, not including women who have transitioned to being men, but just men who have transitioned to being women. Let's explore that, Lewis. I personally am into women, and I tend to be into feminine women. So if we're talking about someone who is a male to female, a transgender individual, physically is a woman, is indistinguishable from the types of women I would be attracted to, it would be there would be nothing in particular that would keep me from having an attraction to that individual, right? Now, if we're going to get to the point where you say, well, you're going to be dealing with someone who identifies as a woman, but would not present to you as a woman in the sense of the types of woman you would normally be attracted to, then it wouldn't necessarily be because they're transgender that I wouldn't be interested. It would be because the person does not fit into the sort of mold of those who I am attracted to, if that makes sense.
So if you were to meet a transgender individual who is a woman, indistinguishable, there's no way you could tell that they transitioned from being a man, and there was full disclosure, and they told you all of this, you would consider dating that person. You would have no problem with that?
I would certainly consider that. And what might come up that would change my mind? I mean, I find that most people would only consider dating a very small percentage of the population, right? I mean, I don't know what you would say, Lewis, but I would say for a vast proportion of the population, I don't know, maybe like 3 to 4% of the population, of the community that you consider yourself generally attracted to, whether you're bisexual or pansexual or heterosexual or gay, whatever. My sense is that that there would be 3 to 5, 4 to 6% of the population you might find yourself compatible with to have any kind of significant relationship with. What do you think of my numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe not that. Maybe it is that low. I mean, I never really thought about that. It would be certainly wouldn't be more than 10%.
So in any case, there's any number of valid reasons why you may not be attracted to someone, and they could certainly be indirectly related to something relating to that individual's transgender reality. But I mean, I don't know. It just seems like if we're truly talking about someone who is physically the gender that you're attracted to, and they present as that gender, and there is no reason to think otherwise, there would be nothing, at least initially, that would block you from being in a relationship with that person. Although there's no question that there would be many people who, once they find out, oh, I was born a man, there may certainly be an intangible that says, something about that just doesn't feel right to me. It wouldn't necessarily be discriminatory in the sense that you're saying that individual shouldn't be entitled to live their life however they want, that they should be restricted in terms of, oh no, you really need to go in the other bathroom. But there's certainly an intangible that could take place where you say, I'm not really feeling a connection with this person.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, I have to say that would probably be a mental impasse for me. I don't think I would be able to do that.
And for many people, I could certainly see feeling the same way, right? It's hard to imagine being in that situation. But I think the question initially is, would you date someone that you meet and they present as a woman and they are physically a woman? That certainly wouldn't be an impediment to at least getting to know that individual.
And to answer the second part of the question, how would this change your sexual identity? I guess in theory, it shouldn't at all, right?
No, I mean, you're still attracted to individuals that are physically female and are presenting and living their lives as females in this world. So as a man, that would not change your gender identity as far as or your sexual orientation.
Right. I think that would, yeah, I agree. That would remain the same.
Send your thoughts on this one. Last question today is from Lisa. Lisa says, hey guys, should I feel guilty about taking shampoo and conditioner from hotels? What about toilet paper and tissues? What about water glasses? And what about towels? Let's address this. So shampoo and conditioner are sort of priced in, right? If you use even just one drop of that shampoo or conditioner, even if it's one of the kinds that doesn't have a wrapper on it, even if you don't touch it, it's presumably going to be thrown out when you leave that hotel. And I don't think there's any question, Louis, that it's okay to take those with you.
I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Toilet paper and tissues, we're starting to get in maybe more of a gray area. I think most hotels would replace the toilet paper roll when someone leaves the hotel room before the next person, although I could be wrong about that. But I still generally think if you take the rest of a roll of toilet paper or the rest of a packet of tissues from the hotel, probably still acceptable.
Yeah, I guess that would still be acceptable. As most people know, there's usually only one backup roll there. There's really not a whole lot you can take. And as we all know, they use the cheapest possible toilet paper. It'd probably amount to, a couple of cents worth of value.
That's interesting, Louis. So are you saying if they use nicer toilet paper, you might feel differently about whether it's acceptable to take it?
No, not necessarily. But if you are someone who might feel guilty about it, at least know that, if you are robbing them, it is completely negligible to them.
Okay. And then water glasses, I think that they may not be specifically inventoried. It may depend on the hotel room you're in, but I don't think you're supposed to take the water glasses. Those are pretty much, there may be 2 near the ice bucket and 2 in the bathroom. And I think those you're supposed to keep. Now, the practicality of it is if you take them, they may not know whether you walked down to the front desk with a glass of water and just left it there or what have you. But I think you're definitely not supposed to take water glasses.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a risk involved here, but I do believe that that you should leave the water glasses there. Don't take the glasses. Right.
And then lastly, towels. You're definitely not supposed to take towels. If you're at a hotel that has a pool or is a beach hotel, you probably won't get in trouble. You won't get charged because they're probably used to the people grab towels from their room and take them to the beach or pool, even though many hotels now say, leave these towels in the room. We have other towels at the pool or beach or whatever. You're definitely not supposed to take the towels, and you may well end up getting charged for them depending on the hotel you're at. Don't take the towels.
You could. And then if you bring it home, some of those towels have an embroidered logo and the name of the hotel on them. And maybe you don't want people to see that you have a Hilton hotel hanging up in your bathroom.
A Hilton hotel towel, that is, yeah. And last thing on this, it crossed my mind. I said there was a really cool, I don't remember where it was, maybe San Francisco, and there was just an awesome piece of art on the wall of like the San Francisco Bridge. And I wondered, the Golden Gate Bridge, if I took that, like if I could get out of the hotel with it, not that I want to, would they notice? Because it's the type of thing where you might never assume, oh, the glasses are here, the towels are here. Is housekeeping keeping close tabs on the art that's on the wall? If you remove the piece of art and also remove the little hanging nail, I wonder if they would even notice. And it was just one of those thoughts of what if they came in and the artwork was gone? Would they track that back? Is that something they check off when the room is cleaned for the next person? And I actually don't know the answer to that, but it was just a funny thought I had.
I would assume that during their training, they are told to pay attention to that as part of a checklist. But, I think it's probably pretty rare that someone takes a piece of art off a hotel room wall. So maybe they don't pay attention to it.
What we can be sure of is the TV you can't take, you're not supposed to take, and it would be very obvious if you did.
Yeah, don't touch any of the electronics, really. Leave the mini fridge, none of that stuff.
All right, on the bonus show, fantastic bonus show today. It's so good, I won't even tell you what's on it. And remember, the $50,000 50-day Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign continues. Please go to davidpakman.com and click on the Indiegogo banner on the right side of the page. Consider making a contribution. Help us fund where we're trying to take the show. If it happens, it will be because of your support.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.